Well, hi. How's everybody doing? I've just come here from the travel doctor, and I had like 4, 5, 6 needles. So if I suddenly just pass out cold, that's probably why. It's a real treat to be part of this conference. I've been able to sit in for the last for that last session, and it's an amazing dialogue, and I think such an exciting time in Halifax to be thinking about our future and the opportunities that are opening up before us. All I'd like to do is just sort of quickly share with you some thoughts, just reflecting on my own experiences in the last little while. As Karash said, I'm the chair of the Halifax Partnership, which is Halifax's economic development agency. I'm also the associate VP for Government Relations and Economic Government Relations and Economic Development at Dalhousie. And I've been seconded, actually, to be the CEO, the interim CEO for the Ocean Supercluster for the last 8 months. So that's why I can't keep track of what my job is. But what's fascinating to me is how deeply the most interesting things that I have encountered in all 3 of those spaces have been rooted and grounded in Halifax, in the momentum and the dynamism of this city. And so what I'd like to reflect on today is as a Future Cities session for Halifax is where I believe and hope that the city can go. I'm not sure which there we go. So I'm just going to, I'll throw out, this will be the sort of the point I try to make very, very briefly, that I think the future Halifax needs to be a place that is conducive to innovation and entrepreneurship and that fosters a global perspective. And I think that means being a city that's attractive to young, innovative ventures that are focused on challenges and opportunities around the world. And the reason why I think this is an interesting way to look at the future of the city is beyond the immediate economic impact that young firms can have. I believe that when we look at places where we see these kinds of ventures thriving, we tend also to find stakeholder communities, social networks, qualities of place that are or that can become drivers of things like meaningful employment, economic dynamism, social and environmental impact, inclusion, and other kinds of goals that I think are the sorts of values that we would really want in the city that we try to build for the future. So as I've reflected on the things that we've been working on, whether it's the supercluster or some of the things we've been involved in through DAL or through the partnership, there's sort of 3 things that kind of bubble up for me that I thought were relevant to reflect on for today, and that's the importance of density, connectivity, and placemaking. So density just in the sense of having enough critical mass of things like talent, infrastructure, commercial activity, immigration to create an economic center of gravity, a motor that can drive other things. Connectivity, then, more thinking of that as the means by which different sectors or communities of interest or value chains are visible to each other and able to intersect with each other. And then placemaking, I think of as the variety of ways in which we ground those things in the place that we are, and how we embrace our unique and distinct comparative advantages that come from our place. And I think all 3 of these things are vitally important, and I think that they all really influence each other. So as I think about the conversation today, and I think about placemaking, I think that what placemaking, for me, needs to do is it needs to make density and connectivity possible. And while I think it's always a challenge, and we always think about the challenges associated with building economic density, attracting investment, attracting companies, growing employment, those kinds of things, I actually think that improving connectivity is where some of the most interesting opportunities are going to come from for us. And among other things, I think that focus on trying to build a place that improves connectivity means a focus on reducing barriers and frictions between people. I think it means making the things that we do, our activities and our accomplishments, more visible to each other. And I think we have these weird cultural ways, and maybe it's like this everywhere, but it's certainly like that here, where we have a lot of communities that are kind of invisible to each other. So I also think it's about linking diverse and disparate communities. So my experience with the ocean supercluster has been interesting because these kinds of goals, these kinds of connectivity goals have really driven the way that we've tried to approach the ocean supercluster. And what the ocean supercluster does in a nutshell is it aims to foster collaboration and co-investment across sectors and across different value chains such that entities and organizations can come together and tackle problems that are otherwise, too big, too costly, too risky for them to take on by themselves as an individual firm or an individual sector. And so the supercluster is very much focused on how do we reduce friction and barriers that would stand in the way of those kinds of meaningful collaborations. And the way that we do that, or the way that I think about that more than anything else, is as an exercise in creating shared purpose or common purpose. And so I think that this is what we need to make central to placemaking for me, is how do we create a place that fosters and is animated by shared purposes. And this is a little bit sort of, heading down the road towards, I guess, a collective impact sort of way of thinking about these things. And I think it's a very rich territory for us to think about playing in because it allows for really transformative and dynamic new ideas to come forward. And I would argue that the ocean supercluster is an example of that. But it can be tricky territory as well because to be successful here, I think we all have to be comfortable operating in a bit of an unowned space that's in between all of the different stakeholder groups. It doesn't work if government tries to put their hands all around it and say, look, it comes down to what we're prepared to fund or the rules we're prepared to pass. It doesn't work if the universities say, look, we're going to do it all on campus and we'll have our own incubators and our own accelerators and our own alumni funds. It works best when stakeholders from across the economy and across society are able to put forward their own best value, but also really work to bring out the best in others. And so I think that this is this sort of unowned space that we need to operate in as we think about building the future of Halifax. And I thought I would just quickly finish, because I'm actually really interested to hear what everybody else has to say about this, by reflecting on sort of just two examples of things that I think are starting to create this sense of shared purpose and becoming a really interesting platform for us to think about the future of Halifax. And so the first one of these is this kind of emerging Halifax Innovation District. And this is a very imperfect map. I've kind of slapped it together with a very little regard for geography or accuracy even. It's an unbounded space, but what I want to sort of convey more than anything is just there is a real density that falls into a fairly tight geographical pattern of real important drivers of innovation, whether it's the universities, the hospitals. This room that we stand in is essentially its living room. In the very, very heart of it. And just behind me and to the right, there's been a whole bunch of new development around Dalhousie's engineering and architecture campuses. Right down the road, you're going to hear about a very exciting development that my colleague Jesse Rogers is leading. It sweeps down to the many new developments, including Argyle, that was rightly recognized for the exciting development that it is, and across the harbor to the new Center for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship, which is a reclaimed, abandoned Coast Guard site that will now be, a distinctive hub for ocean technology and innovation. The waterfront campus, the Ivany campus of the Nova Scotia Community College. So you've got this incredible density of innovative assets. But in addition to that, we've also got these incredible amenities that make our downtown livable, desirable, attractive. Great places to eat, have a drink, meet friends, walk in a park, live. And this is really important because as much as sort of suburban models of innovation will no doubt continue to be important, where you need big campuses and science tech parks and so on, it's also really evident that around the world, these urban innovation contexts are also really significant. And I think for mid-sized cities like Halifax, they're actually becoming a really important economic comparative advantage compared to big, costly urban centers, whether it's the Valley or Boston or Toronto or Vancouver. The second thing and the last thing, and then I'm going to sit down and eagerly listen to everybody else, is just to reflect on Halifax's ocean advantage. And I could easily go on for the next 3 days about this, so I won't. I'll just get a smattering of the things that we have present here that make Halifax, I think, one of the top cities in the world for ocean innovation and impact at global scale. Within the federal government, not only do we have, Canada's East Coast Navy, the largest concentration of military assets anywhere in Canada. We've got the Bedford Institute of Oceanography, the largest federal civilian research entity. We've got the NRC. We've got Dalhousie University and its many ocean labs, the Nova Scotia Community College. We've got over 50 world-class ocean tech SMEs that are exporting around the world. We've got the Irving shipyard that is about to embark on some $60 billion worth of activity over the next 25 years to build the next fleet of Arctic offshore patrol vessels as well as the surface combatant. So this is an enormous collection of ocean-related assets. We've got the Port of Halifax, which is the most significant port on the eastern seaboard north of New York City. We've got the Waterfront Development Corporation, now Develop Nova Scotia, but I still think of mostly the waterfront. That incredible public space that can help to animate all of this. So these are incredible things, two incredible things that I think when you pull them together, this enormous ocean advantage that we have as a city, now pairing up with an incredible emerging context for innovation and entrepreneurship. And I really believe that the future of Halifax will be as a city where the world can come to grow and create the most incredible, impactful, ocean-related ventures in the world. And that will have an enormous impact, I think, in the future good for the planet and an enormous impact on our region and our country. So I will pause there. I look forward to the rest of the conversation. And are you going to take? Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you.